Hi folks, my name's Al Roxburgh, and you're part of conversations that are going on with us, with TMN, about why is it so important to get engaged in our neighborhoods. And I want to talk about that a little way in terms of 4 different reasons for it. The first is about what our churches were, what our congregations were originally. Most of our congregations, if you think about them, were actually built in neighborhoods. And they were designed so that most folk could come and walk and be a part of the church that was in their neighborhood, like neighborhood churches. And the neighborhood was critical and important. And a long time ago, most of the people that you knew and were a part of lived in that neighborhood. But all of that's changed. It's gone. And as a result, most of our churches are now made up of people who basically drive in from somewhere else and only know the people that they meet in their church, and then they disperse into places where they live, and they hardly know anybody in the neighborhoods in which they live. As a result, many of our churches are slowly declining from inside out and are made up of people that have known themselves for a very, very long time. And we've got to deal with that. We need a different way of thinking about church. So that's the first thing. The first thing is churches were designed to be places in the neighborhood, but over a long period of time that ceased to happen. The second reason why this whole being in the neighborhood is so important is because, as all of you know, in so many ways our societies have changed so dramatically. Some of you may even remember a time when it was just natural for people to come to church. They didn't know any different. That was part of their life. They came and were a part of the rhythms of church life. And as you know, almost all of that has gone. It's no longer normal or natural for people to come to church and be a part of church. And in fact, what a lot of churches are doing is that they're just working really, really hard to improve what they're doing, to make what they're doing more attractive and more attractional. But the bottom line is, most of what's going on inside of our churches no longer speaks to people out in the communities and the societies where they live. They're actually not particularly interested in just coming to an improved form of what we've got. That's not where the society is. It used to be, but that's not where it is anymore. And so we've got to learn to ask some different questions. Not how do we improve what we're doing to attract people, not that that's wrong, but we need a different question. How do we listen to hear what's happening to people in order to understand where they are? And that's going to mean us moving from a how do we get them to come here imagination to how do we go and enter and join with them sort of thing. The third reason why this neighborhood is so important is that if we are going to have churches into the future, then we've got to go where people are, and that means entering the neighborhoods and communities where we live. Now this is a big shift, and I don't want to pretend it's not. It's a great big shift, and it's going to be hard work, and it's going to require risk. We've lived in a world as churches in which our whole way of thinking is, how do we get them to come to us? That's just the basic underlying narrative that shaped us. And now we've got to learn a different way of being church, which is how do we learn to join with what God is up to in the neighborhoods and communities where we live. That's the big shift that we have to do. And we don't want to pretend that that's easy. That's going to be hard work. But we believe that's the work on which God is calling us. And that leads me to my fourth and final reason why neighborhood is so important. Because this is who God is. When we read all of the biblical stories, it is God who comes to where we are. It's God who comes and joins us, who, to use the John's Gospel, who pitches his tent beside where we are. So you see, this is how God goes about engaging in our world. And this is how God comes and participates with us. And as God's people, we're being invited again to become like God and join with God in moving back into our neighborhoods. So through 4 basic reasons. Our churches used to be neighborhoods. Our society's changed. We need to go on a different journey from how do we get them to come to us to how we join with them. And fourthly, this is who God is, and this is how God is calling us to be his people. That's why we talk about joining God in the neighborhood.